Welcome to Mystica TV, the channel about healing knowledge, interviewing high-vibe personalities. In our series of talks in English, we have a very special guest today. He just arrived from Japan and he's living in Hawaii, and now we're here in Frankfurt, Germany. He's known worldwide as clinical psychologist, author of books, and spiritual leader. He was born in New York, upstate, and experienced the 20th century as a pioneer of relationship coaching and healer of human encounter. So I'm very honored to welcome him here in Frankfurt. Dear Chuck Spezzano, great to have you here at Mystica TV.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you just arrived. How is it to be in Germany?
Oh, well, I've been here almost 90 times, so it feels like coming home.
Ah, okay. So we're talking about 90 times within what time range?
I think the first time was in 1983.
And do you still remember what your first impression was? What was Germany back then, 1983?
So many things. I was in Bavaria. I gave a talk in Bad Tölz, and it was just a beautiful place, and there was a lot of beer, and it was the best beer I'd ever had. So the Weiss beer. So that was one of the first impressions, and then big tents of people celebrating and people happy.
So that's also a ritual, kind of a, something ecstatic that Germans celebrate. Their big festivities of beer, but of course we have more, luckily.
Yes.
And now we are in very special times. We're not in 1983, we're 2025, and it's a very challenging time. Chuck, how do you experience this time?
Well, I experience it as people needing hope and vision. There's a statement, without vision, people perish. And so much is coming up from the collective unconscious, not just people's personal mind, but what hasn't been healed in past times and places. I predicted this about 8 or 9 years ago, that I could feel this, I could see this coming as I traveled around the world, and I said, people, get ready. We want to be aware, we want to know how to move forward. So what I found, of course, the way to move forward is as you heal, you come back to peace. And as you come back to peace, everything heals. Peace brings love. It brings joy. It brings abundance. It brings hope. It brings the present, which is the gateway to eternity, then there's no problem, right? But
so when at the point of time when you predicted that people should get ready, what advice did you give the people? What should they do? Is it the answer inside? Is it, clean up outside? What was it?
Well, it was healing, basically, because healing expands your mind. It makes you feel better. It gets rid of the problems that are right in your face. So we're all called for healing. And as we heal, it has a positive, peaceful effect that radiates out to the world. So we're not just healing ourselves for ourselves, that's a big job, but then for everybody around us, our family, our friends, our country. So much to heal.
Yeah, and if you start really taking the challenge, there's in German a word called the innere Schweinehund. If you talk about it in English, if I translated it literally, it's called the internal pig dog. So it's that part of us that really is lazy, that wants to stay on the couch, that doesn't want to move forward, that wants to continue smoking, or continuing with sugar, even though the person knows that sugar is something very addictive. So how do you have something like a lace or something, how we can deal with that dog that is in us?
Well, if you think of indulgences, whatever it happens to be, people are on different paths. And some people are on a path where they can do all those things and it doesn't affect them. But it's like whatever you're called for, you have a path all lined up for you. And if you follow that, it's a great path. You know, it gives allowances. It knows where you are in your spiritual development. You know, it's not from something outside us. It's from something inside us that wants to be pure. If you're indulging yourself, what people don't know is to the same extent you'll be in sacrifice, which means you're not receiving. You're doing a lot, but then you can burn out easily enough. But when you give and receive, when you give, you receive. When you receive, you give. But most people are caught up in roles, rules, and duties. And that's a defense. I mean, roles are doing the right thing for the wrong reason.
Well, you're talking about sacrifice. It's something that in overall society is something like an ideal. People think that they can be very spiritual if they help, and give, and other people are having an advantage of it because it helps them, it gives them something good. So, you know, this is the simple concept of sacrificing. Where do you tell the people to kind of take the curve and do something else than just giving?
Okay, so what happens is that when we separate, so these are patterns that actually start in the womb. So we have these patterns. Let's say at 3 months in the womb, your parents had a fight and you felt unwanted. Well, you will carry that into your life. And there's a resistance to your calling, to your purpose, your mission, which is very fulfilling. So all of these big problems in our life are distractions. We're afraid of who we've come to be and what we've come to give. So then at 3 years old, there'll be another trauma because it parallels. If you've done this hundreds of thousands of times as I have, you see the patterns. So it's learning how to heal yourself back to the womb, back to past lives, back to ancestral patterns. That's what we're going to do this weekend is a workshop on ancestral healing.
The women go back the women, the female line, the men go back the male line. Do you always work with that, or is it also that there's more patterns than this to go back because it's so complex?
Well, a man will have his mother's pattern also. Well, and as a woman will have her father's pattern. So it's healing at both, and it's actually pretty easy to do.
Most people think it's difficult. What does it make it easy? How?
What makes it easy is your intention. My first clients in 1971 showed ancestral patterns. There was rape, there was illegitimacy, there was self-attack, and I was doing normal therapy at that point, and I knew that I needed to learn this. In 2 years, I had found a way to access the deeper mind, so that basically that's what I came to do. I studied the subconscious mind. What people would say as I asked these important questions would blow my mind. There wasn't a model of healing that fit this. So I began studying that, and soon, by 1975, past lifetimes opened up. And I was going, they don't teach me this in graduate school. I wasn't prepared for it. But things keep opening that were more and more deep into the unconscious, but which is very powerful. There's treasures there. There's also demons and dragons and scary things that go bump in the night. But once you have that kind of courage, and you can have that kind of courage spiritually if you remember who walks with you. Because Christ is in oneness, Mary's in oneness, Kuan Yin's in oneness. So they're in you, God's in you. So how could you be frightened if you realize that? In A Course in Miracles, it says to get through all fear and every problem is just to realize you are still as you were at creation. You are still one with God. Now we're all caught up in our personal lives. That's our Schweinhund.
You understood me before. I didn't have to translate.
I had heard it before, actually.
Okay.
So, and that pig dog, just wants you to live, very personal life. And then it wants to take that life down. I mean, that's the thing I discovered, that the ego is not our friend. It wants you to have this happy personal life, but so does heaven.
So let's imagine there's a person who has a innere Schweinehund. He is allergic against apples, but every time he goes into the kitchen and sees the apple basket of his wife, he thinks, oh, they are so delicious, I just have to eat an apple. So he eats an apple.
Yes.
And then he's going into a session with you, and you're diving into his subconscious, and let's say he feels that something like a screw was turned and something changed. And then he comes back to the kitchen again and sees that basket of apples. What is happening from your professional point of view then?
Well, then that depends on the extent the healing occurred. So it could be that he could resist that, knowing that he's going to suffer if he goes for the apple. And of course, that's a metaphor for other things that, most men get caught up in. And, but the first thing I would do is I would look ancestrally, because allergies are ancestral. I mean, it may be reinforced in this life by different things that happen. And the more we were wounded in this life, the more we separated. We blamed the person. Look what you did to me, Mom. Look what you did to me, girlfriend. And that's a pattern. Look what you did to me, Dad. You weren't the man I wanted you to be. So every parent falls from that pedestal, and we separate. We're going to live our own life. But when you separate, there's pain. And when you separate, there is feelings of being a victim, one of the big patterns in life. There's sacrifice pattern, which means I will give but not receive. And then and here's the root of it, the independence, dissociated independence. We think independence, I'll just do what I want. I was a very independent guy because I was a very wounded kid. I'm not sitting here.
What happened in your childhood? Why do you say you were a wounded child?
Well, I mean, the toughest thing was always healing myself. Once I got myself, everybody else was easy. When I was 9, I heard my mother screaming at my father in one of their classic fights that she never wanted me. Mom didn't want me to. I was upstairs reading as I would.
You heard it.
I heard it, and it crushed me. And I couldn't understand when I was a young doctor, very athletic, and why my relationships never worked out. And it was this subconscious belief that my mother didn't want me. Now, once I healed that, and it was just realizing my mother's process. It wasn't that she didn't want me personally. As a matter of fact, of the 4 children, I was the one that most supported her. I was like the one that, sent money to her and sent love to her, called her every day when she broke her back, and when she broke her back again. And, it's just, that love gets you through everything. So it's like underneath the healing, it's like I learned the power of relationships. So that was a mistake. At 3, I was probably beaten to within an inch of my life. I thought I was dying. So, and I had to get through that. That was so many layers. And that went back to 3 months in the womb. But let me give you a story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a story from a woman that I worked with in Japan in 1983. And she and her mother had this huge fight because she felt unwanted. And she had proof. Her mother tried to jump off a chair to abort her. She stuck darning needles up her vagina to try to abort her. She drank lye to try to abort her. And so there was this huge fight. Her labor took 4 days. Already there was that pattern of fighting. And so I said, well, what's going on with your mother? She's in a war zone. My father had just been killed 2 months before. She thought, both of us can't survive if I'm pregnant. we'll both die. So it's better to abort the baby and go on. And they used to have such big fights, her and her mother, that the village priest would come running from across town because everybody heard it. And he would run across town and stop the fight and things like this. But she began to realize that and this was a big thing, that she had written this script of her life. And she was afraid of her purpose. And here was the question, because I had bet her 10 minutes before. She said, you'll never get me over this. And I made a bet with her that I'd get her over it in 10 minutes.
So what did you do? I'm curious.
So the key question was, I said, let's pretend that all your life was a sporting event. What's your score? What's your mother's score? And she went, and she started laughing. She says, I have 90, my mother has 10. I said, do you realize you've just been fighting her all your life? It's like a flag fighting its flagpole. And so she said, beforehand, as we got there, my mother has never called me in my whole life. My mother has never told me she loved me in my whole life. So she got to a point where she was laughing about the whole thing and the drama that it had been set up. But she realized it wasn't that her mother didn't want her, it was that her mother was going through all this process and fear and everything, and she had taken it in as a baby. In the womb, we're psychic sponges. We take on everything around us. And then we have these patterns, and they don't really belong to us. So you can heal these patterns, and they come back because they're not really yours. But the ego is very sneaky like this.
Sometimes you have a session like this, as you just described, and then you go out and think, oh wow, yeah, now I felt it. I went through it again. I saw what the true root of the whole thing is, and then you get back into a trigger situation, and bam, it's back, and
What I found in those situations is that the root then happened earlier. I would be working with people back in the 70s, and we'd end up talking about them as a kid. And I was using, well, first of all, my caseload was so big that I was using hypnosis. Look into my eyes. But what happened was, it's like, that wasn't fast enough. So I developed this intuitive method back in the 70s, using your intuition to get to the root of the problem. And I found that if the thing did not heal, if the problem did not heal, there's a problem earlier. It may come from ancestral pattern, it may come from past life. And I found that this method was quick enough to find where the root of it was and then to transform it. Because all pain comes from separation, and all pain comes from misperception.
So it's all about unifying all those fractions or slices.
And it unifies your mind. And basically, even though there are so many challenges these days, there are people who didn't get completely wounded. I mean, we've all been victimized. But as you heal that, then you help the people around you who've been victimized in a similar way. So anyhow, this woman went back to Tokyo on Sunday night after the 5-day workshop, and she wasn't home 10 minutes, and her mother called her from Europe. And during the phone call, she said, my mother said, I love you. I love you more than I can say. And she said, thank you so much. But it's like, I had to get through my stuff first. I guess that's why I have such karma and so many independent people coming to me for help. Because
yeah, and then you said that first you were with classical psychology, then you developed the intuitive way, and then the psychology of vision, which is the special path that you recommend and that you teach. Would you like to outline why and how it was necessary and for you so important to develop something deeper and farther and further and more to open up and to unify the people?
Well, the other way didn't work. All the other ways, all the different modalities. So, I could complain about that, or I could find a new way, a better way.
But that was in the 70s, and we started this talk, we have a very special time quality at the moment. So a lot of things changed in the world.
Yes.
Now I think it's so interesting for me. Are people still on the path of healing? Are they still the same, or does it require a very special another way to cure? Because now it's crazy. I think we haven't been in such a crazy time since the 70s. Or what do you think?
Well, we've had some crazy times in between. But the thing is, this is a time of special challenge. And this is a time where, we can complain about our leaders, but there's an old saying, which is, if you have great soldiers, you don't need a great king. So it's upon all of us to do what we're called to do. What I found back in the 70s is that every major trauma was set up to hide, to run away. We became less of ourselves. For instance, sexual abuse, which I've dealt with all over the world. And basically, there's layers to that. You are playing a family role of martyr to try to save the family. You were caught up in the Oedipal conspiracy, which when I went through graduate school and read about it, I didn't believe it. But when I had done work as a therapist for 10 years, I thought, Freud, what a friggin' genius, because this is a pattern that affects everybody, keeps you from success and from true love and from sexuality and so many other things. It's a fountain of guilt. And I studied it for 5 years because I heard this psychiatrist, young psychiatrist, just inspiring guy. And he said, come to my office 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year for 3 to 7 years. And we may or may not get through your Oedipal complex. And so I kind of pissed me off because I've been doing short-term psychotherapy because I didn't have much time. So it's like to get people through these problems. So I studied it for 5 years in the subconscious and unconscious mind. And then I began to see, it's not just a complex, it's a conspiracy. And it's subconscious, so it's hidden. People don't realize it's going on. And it comes from lack of bonding, which is passed down ancestrally. So all these things that I discovered by 1989. And then, of course, if you've been sexually abused or there's incest or something, there's a deeper layer. And the deeper layer is that you've come to be a sexual healer. And if you can get down to embracing that, because sex is no big thing unless you don't have it. Or it's like, if you have a great sex life, it's no big thing. But if you don't, it can be a really big thing. What I found was that sex is a metaphor for life. So basically, these big ocean liners, going through life, if you can find out where the sexual trap is, it's like the rudder of a ship that turns these huge ocean liners, and there's things on the rudders that help the rudders turn. And that's what sex is. It's like you can correct everything because it's a metaphor for life.
Here I have a book from back then with a picture of you in the 80s, as you just said, and it probably must have been a very different feeling of life back then in that time compared to today. Could you dive back and do you remember?
Yeah, my younger brother. Yeah,
that's your younger brother. Okay.
So it's like in 1975, I was working with psychological process. My supervisor was a psychiatrist, a Navy doctor, was talking to me about how everything, in a group is a process. And so I was like, one time I was in the group and I was watching a young private trying to get the attention of the sergeant. And every time this private was doing anything to get his attention, the sergeant was just ignored him. And I looked out the window on the second floor, and there in a tree, right next was a nest of baby birds and a mother with a worm in her mouth. And there was one baby bird that was just trying to get that worm, just darting for the worm out the nest. And every time the mother would turn its head so it would miss. And I went, they're connected. And then it was lunchtime. I drove down to the ocean in San Diego, and I was thinking about how it's all connected. It's all connected. And we had that cloud inversion because it was springtime and the ocean changing. And all of a sudden, at that moment, I went, it's all connected. It's like the sun burst through all the clouds and it was a bright, sunny day. And I went, holy fuck, and I was just going, it's all connected. And so that deepened the level. So it's to find the key. I've worked with people at times who had cancer, and in one session, their cancer went away.
Of course, a lot of patients out there who go through the oncology to the clinics for years and do very severe things to their body. Then they hear, cancer disappeared in one session. Could you explain what happened?
Okay, so I was doing for 13 years here, in the spring, we would typically do a workshop at the castle. And so this was one of those times, and I got a call, and it was, my wife was doing the afternoon session, so it gave me a chance to rest up and study and write and do everything like that. And it said, this fellow wants a session. And I go, okay, I can do it this afternoon. And so he came to the hotel, and we were sitting outside, a very pleasant day, and he said, I have stage 4 cancer. The doctor said, this is the day I will die. Oh. And I was going, wow. And he said, so I just listen, as I do when I work with people, and right away at the beginning of a session, I'm guided, inspired to do a certain thing. And I was inspired to take him to the hell worlds. Now, the hell worlds, see, we live in a death world where we collectively believe in death. There are heavenly worlds where people have made it back to the garden. And you make it to the heavenly worlds by seeing everyone is innocent. When you have a problem, at the root of the problem, there's a grievance. And there's a desire to die because you're heading away from life. So it's clearing up all these illusions. Anyhow, there's the hell worlds. It's a collective place. And by that time, I had known, there's personal hells, right? There's the hot hell and the cold hell, and there's the torture hell, right? But then I found that there were these collective worlds that are just where people feel so guilty and they are locked down there until somehow they get to a realization that they don't belong there. And back in the 70s, I was doing some work with psychics and healers and spiritualists, and they would go back to where people had died and they were disembodied ghosts, and to how to get them back on the right track. So I learned from those people too. Anyhow, I took him down to because that was the inspiration, take him to the hell worlds, and to get all of the 23 selves that he had relegated, that he had condemned to the hell worlds. And so I had him take all of these selves that he had condemned and take them to the Supreme Court, run by the Holy Spirit. Mm. And, the Holy Spirit always throws those cases out, because innocence was how we were created. And I could do it psychologically, but spiritually it's just quicker. So, psychology of vision is based on non-denominational spirituality. So I just did a workshop in Japan, and I could feel like Buddha's presence. I could feel Kuan Yin's presence, just as like I could feel Mary's presence and Christ's presence. And sometimes they switch things because, they're in oneness, so they get a delight out of whatever you need, that's what they'll bring. Anyhow, he was able to let go of this place where he thought he deserved to die. And he didn't know me. He had heard my name the week before. And he said, that's the guy who's going to help me. And I went, sure, sit down, we'll see what we can do. And so afterwards, he was just joyous.
And the joy is also a very good medicine, as we know.
Yes.
The hormones that are, everything that happens in our body and our mind is then flooding with happiness. So
he called me the next week. He said, I just was tested. I'm totally cancer-free. There's no sign of cancer in my body.
But let's talk about cancer then, because there's so many ways that alternative or other ways than the clinical ways to cure it. Other people say it's an invitation for very deep transformation, and they say they cannot manage it in one session or one day. It's very deep. They have to really dive into, change their life, change their way of life, their eating, the nutrition, sports, fresh air, and all this. So
I got interested in this back in the late 70s because a friend of mine who was in her 70s and a spiritual teacher had cancer. And she was doing nutrition, and she was taking Laetrile back there. And it's like she had a tumor the size of a rugby ball inside her.
Oh, you're talking about Brandon Bays? I was talking about Brandon. I was just thinking of Brandon Bays. She wrote a book about how she had a tumor in her belly of the size of a rugby or basketball. But okay, maybe it's another example in the similar way.
Another example, another friend. But as she began working, and she asked me to do the psychological spiritual part, and we went back to her childhood. She was being tortured by her mother because her mother was so jealous of her father and her relationship. And so anyhow, it made her become very psychic because she could just feel when she had to run and hide. But anyhow, that got me started, just working with my friend. And I went to people in the States, Carl Symington and Brew Joy, and who were working with people with physical issues. And I was interested, so I kept learning about doing this to the point in 1982 and 1983, at a holistic institute, the Tubb Holistic Institute, I was teaching two courses. One was the psychodynamics of catastrophic illness, and the second one was healing relationships, because at the root of any problem, there's relationship problems. I was just rethinking of a woman who came to me in 1979 when I just started my private practice. I've been working with the Navy and Marines in drug rehab. And she came to me and she said, my mother-in-law, she and I hate each other. I mean, one of my second books was called How to Get Along with Your Mother-in-Law or Absolutely Anyone. And my publisher here in Germany, Via Nova, said, no, we can't. That's too particular. Let's make it How to Get Along with Absolutely Anyone. So I surrendered and we did that. And there's more of my books published in Germany than in any other country.
But the other title that I think really puts this word into the center is If It Hurts, It's Not Love.
Yes.
And this, I think it's a key of success to have a headline of a book, a title, which is really putting let's say this word into the center. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Because that's so true, and so many people are still living pain and thinking, if anything happens, something will make that love fulfilling. But it's not that easy. Could you just outline what path you went in that book?
Yeah. There's so many things to say because there's a lesson a day for 366 days, and it's just. If we are suffering, we're off the track. We've made a mistake. Now, if you suffer in any way, you think somebody else made a mistake, look what you did to me. And of course, we hide those things from ourselves. And so it's finding where you made the mistake and correcting it, because it can be corrected. You could ask. One of the things I do now is just when you catch where the root of it is, and you just ask to be put back on heaven's track, where there's holy family bonding. So that restores the family. That restores the heartbreak.
And it's also storing.
And then there is, the next thing is, what soul gift did you bring in to save that person? Because when we're victimized, we made a promise that we would save that person. Now that's at an unconscious level, that's at a soul level. So if we give the gift, we're freed. And see, because so many times in Tokyo, in this last workshop, I'd work with somebody who had, how many heartbreaks do you have? 5. Some people have said thousands, I want to say. Okay, 5 heartbreaks. And you didn't take those heartbreak and make your present husband pay for it, did you? And that, they'd always get that busted laugh or that busted smile. Because those parts that are hidden in the mind, they want to be found out. Thank you for noticing. Thank you. I've been down here. I really deserve this Oscar. I've been suffering all these years, but thank my director. Thank, my fellow actors. But they free themselves.
Yeah, but that's what it is. A lot of people have some bill running. Yeah, and it's heavy on the soul to have that bill inside yourself. Mm-hmm.
And then we punish the people around us. If you have problems with your children, there's unresolved issues with your parents. And as that gets resolved, then your kids just automatically get better.
It's like a mirror, like the kids there and the parents there. Mm-hmm.
And that's, then it gets passed down ancestrally.
Chuck, I brought a set of cards. It's this set of cards. It's called Cards of Knowledge, the way inside, into the internal world. That's translated like this. And I would like to ask a question and let you draw a card, if you like.
Okay,
Is it okay for you?
Sure.
And let's see if we can ask a question which is about those times now, because there's so many people are afraid that civilization is going, downstairs, and that we're kind of landing into some kind of Middle Ages. Other people say, oh, we're rising, our consciousness is rising, and something really great is happening. So how about we ask the question, what is the future going to be like? Is that a good question for you?
Yes, it's sure. Okay, and I typically, when I go to use the cards, and I've done about 8 different decks, and they're basically there to empower yourself. That was my name for this first deck. In England, they called it the Enlightenment Pack.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of stuck. But so I pray a little bit and then pull a card and say, and this is like a key pattern going on in the world. So if it's a negative pattern, then that's what we're called to heal. And the card deck shows ways to do that. If it's a positive pattern, it means that if there's a problem, this is what it's all about, is to realize that this is the gift that you're meant to receive. This is the gift you're meant to share. And now these are color coded. Some of the other cards are all one thing, so I won't peek. Though I'm a peeker, I won't peek. Okay, so this is what's coming.
I'm curious, what did you draw?
Peace.
Oh, joy and grace. So there's on the card, just describe it just for the audience.
Yeah,
there's
it's the grace deck, and it's peace, and it's people dancing together. Now, what I have found is that people have in the soul mind, in the unconscious, in past lives, if you will, in ancestral patterns, there are war zones being passed down. And that shows up as stress, as illnesses, as problems, as fights, and how to change that. So what peace is that all of a sudden, if you have a fight on the outside, you have a fight on the inside. And you could heal. It's harder to heal a fight on the outside because they're wrong, of course, and we're always right. But and under righteousness, there's guilt. Under all judgment and grievances, there's guilt. There's lessons we haven't learned.
But do you think guilt exists really, or is it just a projection of human?
Well, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
Here's a spiritual question. Did God create guilt?
I think religion created that concept of guilt. That's what my perspective is, but I don't think that my perspective is has a general meaning. It's just my perspective. Other people can have another
it's
one.
like you project out innocence. That was a mistake. Yeah, we all made mistakes, but how to get back on track, how to heal that, and then you become more peaceful. And see, all of our minds are connected. And so it's like as you become more peaceful, it radiates out. As we get over this belligerence that's going on, this, you did this to me. What I found that blew my mind, starting back in the 70s, and of course it's a continuous learning, is that we chose it, we made it, and we hide that. That's our ego, that's our Schweinhund. And so we have this ego mind, and we have this Holy Spirit mind, this Tao. And the world is full of dualism. And when you heal any dualism, there's peace, there's confidence.
So I would like to finish up
Yes.
and just show this card again to the audience, because I think it's a great hint how to deal with the future, Chuck. I think it's people dancing in a circle and holding their hands. And as I understood, hopefully right, that your psychology of vision is friends that help other friends. And
Yes.
this is something how to solve problems of the future as well, is building circles, getting together and share what is here, joy. And so then something is coming that is underneath. It's called grace, Gnade in German. Gnade is something that is kind of,
Yes.
kind of coming like golden flakes from above and make the body feel good, make the mind feel good, and make the human one again. So
Yeah, and when you feel peaceful or good, you know you deserve it. The thing about that independence and doing things your way, which has gotten us into this mess, is that it's not doing it. It's like, okay, your way, your partner's way, that's a fight. But how about heaven's way? Heaven wants everyone to win. We're all God's children.
it's the win-win-win-win-win situation.
Exactly. Would you like to help God?
Well, he doesn't need help.
Right, that's what everybody says. Except he does in this one area. If you want to help God, help his children. They're all his children.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Yes.
That's a great ending. I really appreciate that you joined us here on your second day being in Germany, and I hope that you have great seminars, great crowds tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And of course, we hope that we will see you again in Germany. So good
Thank
luck
you.
and
It's
take care.
great to be here and happy to come back.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for today, thank you for listening to Mystica TV, and see you at the next talk. Bye-bye.
Okay.